Dr. Ashley Butterfield, and I'm a clinical psychologist at the OCD and Anxiety Center. The OCD and Anxiety Center is a private practice that provides structured, evidence-based treatments for individuals who have anxiety disorders, obsessive-compulsive disorders, and other related mental health issues. The OCD and Anxiety Center also provides parent psychoeducation and training, intensive treatments, and in-home services. We have 2 locations, one in Orland Park, Illinois, and the other in Oak Brook, Illinois. The OCD and Anxiety Center is currently developing a video series to help individuals find healthy ways of coping with stress, anxiety, depression, and other reactions that they may be having in response to the coronavirus epidemic. Today, I'm here to talk to you about specific techniques that can help with coronavirus-related anxiety. Before I jump into the techniques, I want to lay some groundwork. First thing that's important for you to know is that our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors are all interconnected with one another. Therefore, if we address any one of these 3 domains, by default, we're going to be enacting an effect and influencing the other 2. While there are many things that we can do behaviorally to address distressing emotions, I'm going to talk to you today about some specific things that we can do to address our thought process, which is often the catalyst for our emotions and for our behaviors. So the first technique that I'm going to talk about with you is the identification of cognitive distortions. Cognitive distortions are thinking traps, or they're inaccuracies in our thought process that may deceive our brains into believing things that aren't exactly true, or that may not tell the whole story. Some examples of cognitive distortions are things like jumping to conclusions, where we jump to a conclusion, oftentimes a negative conclusion, even though we may not have enough evidence to support it as being something that's credible. Another type of cognitive distortion is minimizing the positives, or sometimes disqualifying the positives altogether. A third type of cognitive distortion is magnifying the negatives. Sometimes this is known as catastrophizing, right? Going to the worst case scenario. Another type of cognitive distortion is all or nothing thinking. Sometimes this is also referred to as black or white thinking. And this is when we are thinking in extremes, when it's either all good or all bad, and there's no middle ground. It's as though we omit the gray zone entirely. A good indicator of when there might be some all or nothing thinking going on is when we see absolute words standing out, such as always, or never, or every time. That's a good indicator that all or nothing thinking might be in play. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of cognitive distortions that may sound familiar in the midst of the coronavirus epidemic. More specifically, we're going to focus on all or nothing thinking, right? So one example of this may be, if I contract the coronavirus, I'm going to have to go to the hospital, and I'm definitely going to be put on a ventilator. Another cognitive distortion of all or nothing thinking might be something like, we're never going to get out of quarantine, and I can't stand being separated from other people and being housebound for any longer. So typically, cognitive distortions are really unhelpful to us, and they tend to precipitate a negative emotion of some sort. And because these thinking traps have a lot of emotional pull, we oftentimes fall right into them without questioning them, simply because they feel like they're true, right? They're upsetting to us, they distress us, we're kind of already buying into them, and we don't think to question them because, right, if they weren't true, we wouldn't have this strong reaction. We wouldn't feel this poorly about it. That's usually the rationale. So buying into the cognitive distortions leads to more cognitive distortions, which leads to more negative experiences emotionally, which leads to more cognitive distortions, and so on. It's a very reciprocal pattern here. And so being able to identify cognitive distortions is the first step in being able to distance oneself from these unhelpful thoughts and to begin to replace them with something that's more of a balanced thought, more of an adaptive thought. And this is where the second technique, called cognitive restructuring, this is where cognitive restructuring comes into play. So cognitive restructuring is a technique that helps people learn to examine their thought process rather than just accepting their thoughts at face value. This technique helps us to stop, to question or challenge our thoughts, and to examine the evidence, both the evidence that supports the thought and the evidence that refutes the thought. So being very comprehensive and examining full spectrum of evidence here. So some questions that can help you to start challenging an anxious thought would be things like, am I basing this thought on my fears, or am I basing it on facts? Am I basing it on concrete evidence? Or am I thinking in extremes here when probably the truth is somewhere in the middle, right? Am I considering all of the evidence, or am I only focusing on the information that's confirming my worries? Such questions should help you begin to challenge the original thoughts and the original perceived credibility of those thoughts. And once this has been accomplished, we're going to be ready to move on to the next step, which is developing a reframing statement. Some reframes, I'm going to go through some reframes that are connected to the all or nothing cognitive distortion thoughts that we covered a little bit earlier in this video. So just as a reminder, the initial thought was, if I contract the coronavirus, I'm going to have to go to the hospital and I will be put on a ventilator. That's our original thought, all or nothing. Right? A reframe for this is that many people who have contracted the coronavirus have been able to manage their symptoms from home. I'm not a member of an at-risk group, and I have been following the guidelines to minimize my exposure to the coronavirus. If I do happen to become exposed to the coronavirus, it's not a guarantee that I will definitely contract it. There are things also that I can be doing to boost my immunity and my resistance to this virus, such as eating well, getting enough rest, exercising, and managing my stress. Now, returning back to the second cognitive distortion of, we are never going to get out of quarantine, and I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to stand being housebound and being isolated from other people. That's our original thought, riddled with cognitive distortions there. So we're going to then shift over into the reframe mode, right? So taking that thought and reworking it into something that's more balanced. So this will pass. Epidemics always pass. And it's important that the proper precautions are in place to keep us safe. I'm doing what I can to stop the spread of the coronavirus. I'm safe in my house, and I can use this time as an opportunity to engage in fun or relaxing activities. I can use this time as an opportunity to get to things that I have been putting off, or things that I am normally too busy to do. I'm going to choose to prioritize my self-care during this time. So as you can see, cognitive restructuring is much more than thinking positively or distracting ourselves or redirecting our thoughts or not thinking about upsetting things. Right? So cognitive restructuring doesn't dismiss or deny the feelings behind the initial thought. It doesn't trivialize those feelings. It doesn't say they're no big deal, it's nothing to worry about. Instead, what it does is help you to evaluate your thoughts and to integrate them into a more balanced perspective. Negative emotions such as anxiety tend to lead us to focus practically exclusively on the negative or threatening information. And so it's a very skewed scale. Right? The scale is very tipped in terms of having almost an exclusive focus on that distressing information. Right? So negative thoughts, anxious thoughts can also lead us to jump to conclusions, as we've talked about, and can cause us to abandon our critical thinking skills. Often this will lead us to operating on our what if fears, our what if worries, what if this happens, or what if I get sick, or what if my loved ones get sick. It leads us to operating on fears such as that, as though they are actually not what ifs, but that they're what is. As though they're actually true, as though they're actually reality, as though they are actually happening real life, real time. Right? Cognitive therapy techniques and other therapeutic strategies can help us to separate what is possible from what is probable. And let me make this very clear, very different. What if anything can be what if, anything could be possible, right? But just because something is possible doesn't mean it's probable, doesn't mean it's likely to happen, doesn't mean it's going to materialize in real life. So a lot of times in the midst of anxiety, it feels like those two are one and the same thing. So these strategies can help us to separate that out. It can also help us to de-escalate our negative mood states, and it can help us to respond in ways that are going to be effective and adaptive and constructive to our overall well-being. And such strategies are really of vital importance during all times, but particularly during these periods of really high stress and uncertainty. If you would like to learn more about these techniques, please visit our website at www.theocdanxietycenter.com and check out our blog. While you're there, please look at some of the other blog entries that have been completed by my colleagues. They will give you some additional strategies and techniques that you can be using to more effectively cope. The OCD and Anxiety Center is currently offering telehealth appointments by which you can obtain high-quality mental health treatment from the comfort of your home. If you believe that you would benefit from specialized treatment and additional support to improve your mental health, please contact our office at 630-522-3124. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay connected.